Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. So in this tutorial, we're going to be looking at how to work with variables and functions in SQL. Okay, and then you're going to what we're going to learn at the end of this video. We're going to go ahead and apply it in the last video where we generated the report. Now we're going to be using functions to generate the market value from the last report. Okay, so let's begin and let's talk about functions. I'm just going to go in here. I'm just going to create a new file, and inside of this file, I am just going to go ahead and simply talk about variables. So what are variables? So if you've ever done programming or you're new to programming, there's some concepts called variables, right? So if you've done programming before, you have done maybe Python, C++, Java, you probably know what a variable is, right? A variable is just a container in which you store some information in the computer's memory that you can retrieve later on and use. So that we have the same concept in SQL where we can have variables. So let's just go ahead and keep a commentary, say variables, just like this. So the variables, that's how it's spelled, and work with variables. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's see the different ways of creating variables. So let's look at the first approach of creating variables. So the first approach we're going to be using is just by using the set and then the asterisk, the at sign, and then the name of the variable. Let's say name, and I'm just going to call it the variable name. You can call it this, can be anything you want, so you can even just anything you want, it's still fine. But I'm just going to call this one this, and I'm going to call mine name, and it's going to be equals to, and I'm going to give it a value, right? I'm going to just say let me just say code with print. So code with print. So name is just code with print. So it's just a variable. So we just say set and then at sign equals to, so at sign and then the name of the variable, which can be anything you want, and then equal and then whatever you want to store. This thing is just storing a string in here. This could be a number or anything like that. Okay, so I'm just gonna for now let's store a string in there. Okay, so once I have it done, I can simply go ahead and just print it out using the select statement. I'm going to say select at name. So that's going to go ahead and print it out. So if I go ahead and run the code, now we should see here in here, we should see a prompt. Let me just show up here. So it doesn't show anything for now. Let me just make sure I run this properly. Uh, Let me see if I can get that right here. It doesn't really display for some reason. Okay, so now it displays. What I simply went ahead and did is just press this button right here. I don't know why this wasn't working, but if I press on this, we have it here name. So you can see, right, we have the column as the name of the variable, and then the value inside of that column is the first row is the value of that specific variable. So that's basically how you can generate a variable. So we have also another approach of generating variable, which is doing it is in one line. So it's going to be, let me just call say space, and then it's going to be second approach. Okay, so second approach, just like this. And you're going to go ahead and simply do the following. I'm going to say set at, and I'm going to say set message, and the message you're going to simply say the colon, right, and then equals to, and then finally we specify what you want to say. You say hello world. Hello world is going to be our message. So hello world, and then close of that quotes. Let's close of the quote. So we have those right there. So in this case, we are declaring, sorry, I want to actually did a mistake right. I want to actually just print this out. So select, just like that. So now we are declaring and printing the statement, the variable in just one line of code. Instead of doing it in two lines of code, they're doing it in one line of code, and the difference is just using the right, the two dots, right? Okay, so once I have this done, I can just go ahead and select this and run it. So now we should just see hello world message as hello world right here. So good. Yeah, that's basically how you can generate variables using SQL. Okay, so one thing you also do, let's try to do something a bit more complex. Let's try to find the average price, and then you want to store the average price of a product inside of a variable, and then you want to print that. So let's use the first approach, and then so we can also use the second approach to do that. So I'm going to simply say set. Let me just make this uppercase. So I'm going to say you can delete this if you want. I can just go ahead and delete this if I want. Okay, delete this. I'm going to go ahead and simply say set, and then I'm going to say let's say average, let's say price underscore average, and this is going to be equals to, and you're going to go in here and do pass in a select statement. So whatever the result of the select statement is going to be assigned to this variable called price average, and this is going to be the average price of a vehicle. So let's go ahead and say select, and I want to select finally I want to call the avg function and find the average price of each. Okay, just like that. So average price of each, and that's it. And I want to select this from which table I want. This is going to be from the orders order detail table. So order details, and you're going to say you're going to put us in a where statement, because I want the average price of just one specific product. So I'm going to say order sorry, this is going to be order details dot product. product code, and the product code you just pass in a product code. So you have one product code copy, so I'm just going to go ahead and simply type it in here. So it's going to be 1947, right? So 1947, just like this. And yeah, that's basically it. So once we have that done, we are go so where sorry, there's no equal sign, so where the product code is going to be equal to this. So that's basically it. And if I run the code, so I can just simply end that semicolon right there, and if I highlight this and simply run the code, nothing is going to happen, right? So you can see we have no error. Good. So now we can go ahead and actually print this out. So I'm going to say select, and I'm going to go ahead and say select price avg, just like that. And then once I have this done, select all this code, run the code again. It's not let me just go ahead and run all this. Now you can see the average price right here. So you can see the average price being printed right here. So good. That's the first approach of doing it. Again, you can also use the scan approach, because I taught you we went over two ways of creating variables, right? So the scan approach is just by deleting this right here and just simply saying this right here. Okay, good. So that's basically, so let me just delete this. Okay, so that's basically it. Let me just undo that, so you can see this is basically it. And I'm going to change this one to be select, so we can just select directly. So once I have this done, I can select this part and run it again. So you can see now we have the information being generated right here. So we can see the column name is really bad, so we can actually just give it a column name if you want also. So by using the as statement, you can give it a column name. So once I have this, I can just go ahead and say let me just make this uppercase. So as you can say as price underscore avg, just like that, and then simply run the query again. So run the query. So go, so you can see now the column name is much better and readable. So that's basically how variables work in SQL, and now you can create variables in SQL. Now, so let's go ahead now look at functions in SQL. So functions are just stored programs that can be called and passed in arguments and get a value in return. So basically, you just have a block of code that can be called at any point of or that you want it to be called at. So there are two main types of functions in SQL. There are system-defined functions such as the now, the date, and stuff like that. And also there are user-defined functions. So let's take a look at some of the common system functions. So I'm just going to delete everything for the variables that we have written so far, and I'm just going to say select now, just print that. And so let's see what we get. So highlight that and run it, so you can see now it just returns you a date, a timestamp, right? So a date and time information, a date time information. So we can also have select, and then this is going to be date underscore time, date add. So date is another function that simply say add take now, which is going to be the current date, and you want to say interval, and you want to pass in an interval of 20 and then 20 days, just like that. So what this simply 20 day, just like that. So what this simply going to do is going to take the current time plus 20 days. Okay, let's make it 10 instead of 20. It's just preference, okay? So we can do anything you want. So just pass it right here on the code. So this is the current date is on the 2nd. So current date is 10th of February, which I'm recording this video. So plus 10, that's 20th of February. So you can see right here, 20th of February. I don't know if you guys can see this clearly, but it's right here, 20th of February, right? So the current date is 10. 10 plus 10 days is actually 20 days. So get 20th of February. And those are just some inbuilt functions that we have to do a lot of, to perform a lot of functionality, some functionality, right? So these are inbuilt function. What about user-defined function? So this is how we have looked at the inbuilt function and how to call them. There are a lot of these inbuilt functions. We can go over all of them. You can just go ahead online and search for MySQL inbuilt function or system-defined function. You'll come across a ton of them. Okay, so now let's talk about user-defined functions. So user-defined functions may or may not have parameters, right? A user-defined function may or may not have parameters, but must specify a single return value in that which is mandatory. The return value can be of any MySQL type, can be a number, and like an integer, a floating point number, string, or something like that, right? So what the define function just passing the name of the function, the list of parameters, the return type, right? Like which data, which return type you want. And one important thing you have to specify whether the function is deterministic or non-deterministic, and then finally the function body. So what do you mean by a function being deterministic or non-deterministic? So deterministic always returns the same value for the same number of inputs. So for example, you write a function that simply adds two numbers together. So let's say if you pass in 1 and 2, it should return 2 as the sum of those two numbers. Always it should return 2 as the sum of those two numbers. So for the same input, it should return the same output no matter the situation, and that's we call it a deterministic function. And a non-deterministic function is that you pass in an input, but the output is going to be different depending on different circumstances, right? So e.g., let's say depending on the time of execution, right? So uh, let's say you have read a function. Whenever it's called, it returns to the last products that were inserted into a database 10 days ago. So if you run it today, you get a different list of products. If you run it again tomorrow, that's one day pass. So the products that were exactly 10 days won't be returned, as they are now 11 days, right? So every time you call the function, its output changes depending on different circumstances. Example, the date of execution, or some, I don't know, there are different ways you can write functions that make it not return the same output every time you run it. So these are called deterministic functions. Sorry, non-deterministic functions, whereby deterministic functions return the same input for the same output all the time. Okay, so that's the difference between deterministic functions and non-deterministic functions. So let's go ahead and see how you can create functions in MySQL. So in MySQL, there are two different approaches of creating functions. The first one is by using a user-defined function. Secondly, you can also create functions using, you can write the query you can write the query yourself, or basically you can just simply use MySQL workbench to generate the function for you. So we're going to be using MySQL to generate the function for us, because I don't see the point of memorizing code, because code and syntax always changing. So if you memorize something today, tomorrow it will change, right? So just use inbuilt functionality to be able to generate functions and make things easier for you, instead of having to memorize code to generate all that. So okay, so once we have that done, let's go ahead and see how you can generate a function. So generate a function, you're going to be using MySQL, but again, you can write this from scratch if you want, but I'm just going to go ahead and click on the function. So if you go in here into our classical models, you can see table, views, so procedures, and then function. So click on that and then simply click on create a function right there. So create function, and once this is done, it will bring for you this right here. So once you have this output right here, you can see you have new function. This can be the name of the function that you want. So we're going to call ours get underscore market underscore value. The reason why you're trying to get market value is that we wrote some query from the last tutorial, which is this query right here, and which returns for us the market value. So we want to move this into a function. Okay, so we want to move this into a function, so you can simply call that function right here in one line of code, instead of having all this code which looks a bit messy. Okay, so to generate the average price, right? Basically, the market value, which is the average price of that specific product that customers bought it for. What you need to do, we need a product code or that specific product, which is going to be an input. So we can specify the input right here. Okay. So inside of this parenthesis, you can pass in input. So if you've done other programming languages, you're probably a bit familiar with this. So we need to pass in input, and we're going to call this input product code, just right here, and you specify the type, and it's going to be variable character, because if you look closely, we're talking about the product code, and if you go ahead and check product code, it's going to be kind of an integer, sorry, a string value. So it's going to be a variable character. Let's say that its maximum is going to be 30. It's not going to be more than 30 characters. Okay, let's make it 100. Okay, so it's not going to be more than 100 characters. So that's basically it. And then the return type is going to be a float, because it's going to be, for example, if you find the average price of the car, of the car, you can decimal point, right? So maybe let me just run this so I can show you to you. So if I run this, you can see right here the market value is decimal, so like 153.68. So that's a decimal value. So we need to go ahead and integer is not a decimal value. Okay, so let me just give you, this is an integer, this is a floating point, this is also a floating point as well. So this is an integer, floating point number, and also a floating point number. So we want an integer, a float, to be returned. So we're going to say float. So the return type is going to be of type float. Good. And this function should return to us the same value each and every time we pass in the information, right? So we're going to make this one to be deterministic. So deterministic. So right now we just have our function being a deterministic function, but you might also think of it this another way, right? So people are always making different orders and buying different products our store, right? So the average value should be able to change from time to time, despite of having the same product number, right? But think of it like having a constant value. I don't think the product number should really change. So I think we should make it the average of the market value of the vehicle should change, because basically if you just pass in the same value, it's just fine for you the average of that. So there's no point of making it non-deterministic. But if you want, you can just say not deterministic or something like that, and then you get it non-deterministic data. But for now, I'm just going to make it deterministic. Okay, so once we have that done, what I also want to go ahead and do now, I need to go ahead and pass in the values that I want. Okay, so what I want to do is write the query to select the information that we want. Okay, So I'm just going to go ahead and go inside of code and just simply copy it from here because we already have it typed out. So I don't want to waste your time watching me type this out. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy all of this right here. So copy all of that and then simply go to our function, and in here I'm just going to go ahead and paste it in there and try to fix the indentations. Okay, so once we have that information, let me try to zoom out a bit so that this can be much easier to see. So fix that, and also let me just select all this and then tap back. Okay, so once I have that information properly arranged, good, we are good to go. So what I want to go ahead and do instead, now we have to specify the return type. The return type is not going to be one, right? The reason we're getting an error, I think, because we specified the return type to be a float, but no, don't worry, we'll come back to this just in a second. So what I want to do is to create the variable and store the average price in that variable, and then finally return the variable. And we covered out how to work with variables in here, right? I deleted the code, unfortunately. So let's go ahead and actually write it again. So to declare variables, you just have to say the concept of variable. We have already covered the concept of variable. So I just want to say declare, just like this, declare. And I'm going to go ahead and declare, I'm going to call it price underscore AVG, which is just price average, just like that. And price average is going to be of type float. So we specify the data type as float, just like that. And we end that there. And then down here, I'm going to go ahead and simply say set the price underscore avg is equals to then this statement right here. So the price avg is going to be this statement right here. That's going to go ahead and select the information that we want. So I'm going to end this with a semicolon right there. Yeah, that was what was causing the error right here. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and have the code written as this. So we're going to select the price, right? The average price of the car, depending on what value was passed. So we have to use this parameter in here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this parameter, and it's going to be replace this with what you have just the variable that you have passed into our function. So the order details of product code is going to be the product code which you have passed in as when you're calling at the point of calling the function. So that's basically it. So yeah, that's all for the function. For now, we are going to go ahead and return the average price instead of just returning one. So we're going to go ahead and return the average price. So that's basically the function that we have created. So that's all we need to do. And let me just change it to be uppercase or deterministic, just like that. Okay, so I just want everything to be uppercase to just maintain the consistency. So once we have this done, we are good to go. So you can just go click on apply, and then you can see the SQL code. So if you want to type this out yourself, this is the code that you would have to use. So you have to start from delimiter, the model to use, then furthering the function, and then finally you close off it off just like that. So once I have this, I'm just going to hit on apply. It's already applied, so I'm just going to hit on close. And if you go back into our database, what you can see now, it has a drop down. So if you click on that drop down, you can see the function right here. So just click on the run sign next to it, which is the second sign to your left, to your right, and just click on it. And if you click on it, it's going to bring a pop-up right here. So it's asking for the product code. Okay, so let's go ahead and try to find the average price of each product code. So let me just cancel this for now. Try to find the product code. Let me just try to find the average price of this specific product code. So I'm going to copy this. Select this right here, copy it, and then simply go back in here, run the function one more time. So call that function basically, and then pass in the product code, and then execute. It's going to return to you the average price of that product. So you can see the average price, which is right here. So even if you go in here and you run this code again, you should now get back the same amount, is 153 point something. So run, you can see we have 153.68, and also here we have 153.67, which is the average market value. So basically the market value, which is the average selling price of that vehicle. So good, that's how you can get back, you can create a function in MySQL. So you can see we're getting the results that we want. So good. So now how can you use that function right here? Because I want to replace everything in here with the function call. We just call the function and give it the column name. So this is how you call the function. So just call the function right here. I'm just gonna copy this, move it in here. I'm just going to go ahead and paste it in here, and I have to call the function, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and pass in the product code, which is going to be the ord.product code. So if you look in here, it's going to be the order details.product code. So I'm going to get the product code. So I'm going to go in here and say order details, so product code, just like that. So for each row, we're going to call this, for each row of your running, we're going to call this function that's going to return to us that product code information. So we just go ahead and select this, and we run it one more time. So let's see. Yeah, so you can see you're getting back the same results right there. So we are using now a function instead of having using a code related query. So you can see now our code is much more readable. It's just one line of code instead of having that whole code related query that you wrote. So you can also move everything in here instead of a function if you want, but function basically just return one value. You can't return a table from a function, so you have to create a function individually for each of these and then pass in the other the product. The information can be used to retrieve these individual columns, and I really don't see the point of putting these guys into a functions into their own individual functions, so I just left them here. But for the correlated query, you can just put it, have it in its own function. Okay, so that's basically how functions work in SQL. Again, our code is not optimized because for each row, for each record, we have to calculate we have to calculate the product market value. Imagine this, you see the market value for this product, it appeared multiple times, right? Multiple times, and you're doing the same calculation of finding the basically the average selling price or the market value of the vehicle. You're doing that calculation every row. For every row, you're doing that calculation. We did the same calculation, we do it again, we do it again, do it again, again and again, because this function is being called for every row. So that's really not efficient, and it's not optimized. So the best thing to do is to use other ways of doing it. So you can use a CTA, whereby you calculate all the values and store it in a CTA. So sorry, a CTE rather. So you just pull that information out of a CTE instead of having to calculate it every time. So you join the CTE at one go, and then you just pull the information you want from the CTE. So the CTE can have two columns, the product code column, and then finally the market value of that specific product. So if you have a product like that, you just pull out the information from the CTE instead of having to call this function, run it all over every time again. So we're going to cover all of that in the next row, and also look at things like store procedures. We can store this in a store procedure to save a lot of time. Okay, and also we'll look at views. We can also use a view in this case to generate a table. Okay, instead of having to see on the left, you can have views right here. Put this instead of a view, instead of having to call this function all the time, we just pull the information out of the view instead of having to find the average every time. That's not efficient, right? So guys, that's all for this video. Thanks for watching. If you guys have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. I'll do my best to get back to you. So thanks for watching. In the next video, we're going to look at store procedures. If you want to support me, the easiest way you can support me is just by liking the video, sharing this content with anyone who you think might find it helpful, and also subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. And if you want to buy me coffee, the link is going to be in the description where you can buy me coffee. Okay, so thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Keep safe.